It's 5:30 and I welcome everyone to the Saugeen Shores Committee of Adjustment for Tuesday, May the 19th, 2020, and I now call this virtual meeting to order. And I'd like to welcome Mr. Sharma, our newest member of our committee. Welcome, Mr. Sharma. At this time, item number 2 is any acknowledgement of any pecuniary interest. You can either declare it now or such time it comes on the agenda. Councillor Grace.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I am declaring a pecuniary interest for item 5.2 on the agenda. The nature of the pecuniary interest is that I own a cottage, which is about 3 doors down from the property in question.
Thank you, Councillor. Anyone else? If not, I'll move on to item number 3, which is the adoption of the minutes. And may I have a motion and a seconder to adopt the minutes, please? Moved by Deputy Mayor Madison and seconded by Councillor Rich that we do adopt the minutes. Any discussion about the minutes? If not, all in favor? That is declared, that is moved. Thank you. I don't believe we have any additional business under item number 4, so we'll move in with to the public hearings. Our first hearing is number 5.1. This is the file number A-2020-004. This is the property owned by Michael and Bredana Madison with the municipal address of 518 Izzard Road in the former town of Port Elgin. Mr. Kingsbury, please.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair, and good evening, members of committee. The property is at 518 Izzard, as was noted. So I'll just go through the slide deck if we can bring that up. And I'll bring you through the background and what's proposed on this file. So if we go to slide 2, you'll see the site context. It's near the shoreline in a residential area of town. It's designated residential and environmental hazard. It's currently used as a residential use, has an older structure on it, maybe dates to the 1920s, and the applicants are proposing to reconstruct or construct a new dwelling on the property in largely the same footprint. So if you go to the next slide, purpose and site plan, the backyard is considered the portion of the property that's facing the beach. So the frontage is on Izzard, and they're seeking a rear yard setback of 1.5 meters. So in the bottom sort of left corner of the structure, the required setback is 1.5. The existing structure is setback 1.8. So this is a result of having to shift the property to the south slightly by about 70 meters, I believe, and that kicks the foundation towards the lot line. So they require relief from that rear yard setback for that purpose. Now if we go to the next slide, I'll just quickly go through this. It's a PPS. In terms of the PPS, it's considered a settlement area, which obviously encourages a variety of mixed uses, including residential. County official plan, it's a primary urban community. Saugeen Shores, as mentioned, designated residential and environmental hazard, and the zoning is shoreline residential. So next slide. We circulated to the town and the following comments were identified. Ensure the specific setbacks requested would satisfy the proponent. I think the town was potentially concerned they're very specific setbacks, and to remove any encroachments on the shore road allowance, which is the beach area, to the town's satisfaction. So the applicants were relayed these concerns and find the setback proposed as acceptable. We circulated the SVCA. They confirmed that the property is, portions of the property are within a dynamic beach area. However, the structure itself is outside of any hazard lands. Next slide. So they are in essence, okay with the application. No public comments were received on the file. And then in terms of the 4 tests, does it meet the purpose and intent of the official plan? Yes, it's facilitating the construction of a residential dwelling within the residential designation. Does the variance meet the intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw? I would submit that it largely does, aside from the relief being proposed. And as noted, the existing setback is 1.8 meters. So this is not far off than the existing situation. Is the 3rd test, is the application desirable for the appropriate development of the land, building, or structure? And as noted, yes, this is largely aligned with the current footprint of the existing structure, and it's appropriate to allow the owners to rebuild the dwelling in largely the same location as it existed before. And finally, is the application minor in nature? And in this regard, we look at impacts to the surrounding neighborhood, and it's not expected that the variance will have any impact on the character of the area or the ability of the adjacent property owners to use their property. So in conclusion, next slide. So in conclusion, this is a minor variance to permit a reduced rear yard setback. The application is consistent with the provincial policy statement and upholds the objectives of Saugeen Shores official plan and represents good land use planning. My opinion, it satisfies the 4 tests of a minor variance, and therefore I recommend approval of the variance.
Thank you, Mr. Kingsbury. Is the applicant present on our meeting, Jay?
Yes, they were in the waiting room. I think Tracy will move them over shortly.
Mr. Madison, would you wish to address the committee?
Sure. I'll just mention as, thank you, Mr. Chair. Danielle had indicated that we're moving the cottage slightly to the south in order to come into compliance. And so we're trying to do the right thing, and we're certainly wanting to work with the town to meet all the requirements as we've done with the Conservation Authority and so forth. I just did see something in the report about the removal of the encroachments. As mentioned, this cottage and the accompanying path is a bit of a heritage feature to the cottage. And we just wanted to clarify what exactly is the word removal mean? And considering that beach access for this area of the shoreline is the standard in terms of having cottages having paths to the various beaches. So I was looking for some clarification there.
Mr. Posner?
Yes, well, in these situations, we work with the applicant and it says to the town's satisfaction. So we would like to have any encroachments that would affect the town's ability to be able to manage the shore road. And if there are features that are significant to the landowner, we want to know about them so we can work with them. But I don't have any specific, when I went to the property back in the winter, it was winter and I couldn't see much. Acknowledging that now it's a lot easier to look at that. I'm not sure I have any better answer tonight to offer about the shore road.
Thank you. I will take that offline, presumably. But I did want to mention some of that is structural to the property. And if full removal was undertaken, the actual part of the bank, the shore road allowance would probably tumble to the beach. So I'll work with the town in terms of how we work out those details, but I did want to mention that.
Thank you, sir. Is there any public comment? If not, then we'll move on to the committee. Any questions? Deputy Mayor Matheson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you. Looks like a great project. You have beautiful spot there. My one concern is the garage that is on the Izzard Drive. It is encroaching on to the road allowance. And as I look at the Google Maps and drove down there today, you really don't have a lot of space for parking. I think something that we should look at would be something to do with possible the removal of that old garage, because I don't think it's functional. You may have a different view, but I think you need more parking there as we build a new house. I think we should have adequate parking for the people that will be moving in there.
Mr. Chair, am I allowed to?
Yes, please go, Mr. Messon, go ahead.
Add some information. So the road in that portion, of course, used to be county road. And I would classify it more as a county laneway. And in fact, there's actual property markers on the road. But leaving that aside, that particular garage was removed in, I believe it was 2002, when the sewer line was put onto that street. And the town water was granted to the residents. So the town picked up the garage and moved it temporarily away. So its present location reflects where the town put it back. I would certainly like to keep the garage where it is.
Is there, sorry, Mr. Chair,
Go ahead.
Supplemental. Do you have adequate parking? Looking at the view, most of the parking is in front of your neighbor to the north.
We have, I've been attending the cottage all my life and don't anticipate any parking issues.
This question then, Mr. Chair, to Amanda, our director. As we move along and upgrade and put in new places, we've had issues where we've come across inadequate space for plowing and parking in Southampton, and this has come up again. So how do you feel about, is there enough space there for that building to remain, or should we be looking at some form of parking there?
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Chair. It is a fair question, Deputy Mayor. The precedents we have set is that you have to provide parking, adequate parking on your own property when you come in for that building permit. So we aren't allowing people to continue to park in the street, in the road allowance on these lanes when a planning application comes forward. So that would be something that engineering would be looking for you to do when you came to that point in the process.
Any further questions? If not, would somebody wish to present a motion? Motion moved by Councillor Grace and seconded by Mr. Legault. I would imagine that this is for an approval of, subject to the requirements under the decision sheet. Deputy Mayor Matheson.
Before we approve this, and I see this going forward, then the planning will look at the garage and the situation for parking then?
You can certainly add that to it.
Would like that added, please.
Okay. As this is my first virtual meeting, Jay.
I just want to be clear, if there is a decision to retain any of the features, they would be reporting through council and not this committee, because there'd be a need to enter into any encroachment agreement to allow for encroachments to continue. I just want to make that clear.
Okay.
Understood? Okay.
Thank you. We have a motion moved by Councillor Grace and seconded by Deputy Mayor Matheson that we do approve this project subject to the decisions on the decision sheet. Any discussion? Deputy Mayor Matheson.
Just point of order, it was seconded by Member Legault.
I'm sorry, yes, moved by Councillor Grace, seconded by Mr. Legault. that we do adopt the recommendations on the decision sheet. Any further discussion? All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Mr. Posner, do we have to attend the office to sign all the decision sheets?
We certainly, in the past where we have not been able to physically sign them, we do that at the next opportunity. The record of this meeting is a sufficient documentation, in my view, to be able to proceed with circulating the decision. It'll just be noted that original signed in town offices, something like that.
Understood. Our next item is item number 5.2. This is case number A-2020-. Oh, Councillor Grace.
Just a reminder, Mr. Chair, that I'm declaring a pecuniary interest on this, and I think our host is going to remove me from the screen and mute my microphone.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Rich. Turn your micro. Oh, there we go.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. Just as a point of order, so based on signing off on all of these decisions, should we have a recorded vote? Because at that time, we always had the opportunity if we did vote against it. And not that the last motion was an issue, but maybe it will be in the future. So maybe we should set that precedent from the beginning.
I would agree. There was one abstention. Mr. Sharma did not vote, that I understand, on the last case. Is that true?
Yes, all in favor with Mr. Sharma abstention.
Yes. Thank you. And thank you, Councillor Rich, for bringing that up and on your point of order. And Councillor Grace has declared a pecuniary interest, and she has now gone silent. And our next case is 5.2, which is A-2020-005. This is Jim and Laura Lawton of 78 2nd Street in the former town of Southampton. And I believe it's Mr. Kingsbury.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So we'll go on to the second slide. I'll provide a little more context. This is in Southampton, not far from the shoreline. Yeah, we're just on slide 2. Currently, it's a vacant lot. There was a structure you'll see in the air photo that's been removed. Surrounding uses are residential. It's on municipal water and sewer, and it has year-round access. And next slide, please. So you'll see the frontage is 2nd Street there, and they are requesting relief from the side yard setback, which is to the bottom line, I guess, would represent the side yard. There's a municipal access road, so there's sort of an enhanced setback requirement for municipal access roads of 4.5 meters, and it's considered exterior. So the applicants are requesting a 2.5 meter setback, and the approval would allow them to reconstruct a new cottage in roughly the same footprint as the existing or the former structure that was on the site. Next slide. Again, largely the same PPS context and Bruce County official plan context. They're urban areas which allow for a mix of uses, including residential. In the Saugeen Shores official plan is designated residential special policy area 2. And this is the special policy area 2 relates to restriction on height, and it's zoned R1R, R1-1, a special provision, again, relating to height, I believe. So next slide. In terms of agency consultation, the town of Saugeen Shores indicated no objections. The SVCA as well had no objections. There were, next slide, please. There was one comment received from Michael Kennedy at 87 First Street. He questioned why they were unable to meet the setback. This was brought back to the applicant, and I understand this would have required a reconfiguration of the driveway, which just wouldn't fit functionally. So when we look at an application, we look at the impacts through the 4 tests, and not necessarily can they meet the requirements. So on to the next slide then, the 4 tests. Does it maintain the intent and purpose of the official plan? Again, it's a residential designation. It respects the designation. Likewise with the zoning, it's a residential zone, and the proposal is aligned with that. 3 is the variance desirable and appropriate for the orderly development of the lands. And I would say that it is, for the most part, aside from the rear yard setback, it meets the zoning bylaw amendment provisions. And as noted, this is sort of a unique situation in that it's adjacent to a municipal access road that's largely seldom used, we'll say. And 4 is the impact, is the application minor in nature? And I would conclude by suggesting it is minor. It's not anticipated that it will impact any neighboring properties from enjoying their properties. And in summary, the next slide, it's the variance is to permit a reduced exterior side yard setback. It's consistent with the PPS and upholds the Saugeen Shores official plan, and represents good land use planning. And as just noted, satisfies the 4 tests in my opinion, and as such, I recommend approval of the variance.
Thank you, Mr. Kingsbury. Does the applicant wish to address this committee?
I don't think the applicant is on this webinar.
Do we have any public comment to make, or is it merely the letter that we received?
I think just the letter is the only information from the public.
Understand. Committee, any discussion? Deputy Mayor Matheson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And through you, in looking at the property, I believe the variance is in accord with what the owner looks to do. I believe there's a few little hazards that have to be taken care of, and in talking with our department, I'm totally support this motion and plan.
May I have a motion, please? A motion moved by Councillor Rich, seconded by Deputy Mayor Matheson, that we adopt the recommendations of the report and approve the report based on the decision sheet. Any discussion? All in favor? Mr. Sharma, Mr. Legault, Mr. Rich, Ms. Kuntz, Deputy Mayor Matheson, that is carried. If we could invite Councillor Grace back to the meeting, please. Our next item is item number 5.3. This is file number A-2020-006. Cynthia Seyfried, with the municipal address of 102 Huron Street South in the former town of Southampton. Mr. Kingsbury.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So if we can bring up the slide deck again. I'll just go through the slides to provide a bit of context on the application. Good. Okay, thank you. So again, this on slide 2, you'll see that this is again within a residential area. Its current use is residential, and the applicant's surrounding land uses are residential as well. It's on municipal water and sewer and has year-round access. The applicants are, on the next slide you'll see, requiring a rear yard set, a reduction in the rear yard setback to facilitate the construction of an attached garage. So the setback requires 7.5 and they're requesting 2.7. And if you go to the next slide, you'll see a photo of the current situation. It has a detached garage. So they're planning to demolish the existing structure and construct an addition onto the existing dwelling in the form of a garage. So in terms of circulation, the town of Saugeen Shores indicated no objections, and the SVCA again had no objections. As of the meeting, we didn't receive any comments from the public. And I'll just quickly go over the 4 tests. Again, very similar policy context in terms of the official plan and zoning. I will note, as the previous 2 applications, I should say, I will note this property has some cultural heritage value associated with it, and that's due to its proximity to an existing archaeological site, which I understand to be a shipwreck of all things. So this is a provincial requirement that we meet the provincial guidelines for archaeology. So there is a requirement to have a licensed archaeologist confirm that the application is acceptable and won't impact archaeological resources. Okay, so aside from, again, in terms of does it maintain the intent of the zoning bylaw, aside from the requested relief, it largely does. It reduces the structure, the existing setback of the detached garage from the neighboring property, which is the closest property impacted. So I think it's a betterment overall to the existing situation by having the garage attached to the house. Is it appropriate? The 3rd test, appropriate and desirable form of development for the land, building, or structure. Again, just reiterate, I think this is a betterment overall. It's not possible to build an attached garage structure just because of the way this house is oriented on Huron Street without seeking relief from the zoning bylaw. And the 4th test, is it minor? Again, this is the closest house impacted by this development. We'll see a further increase in the setback from the proposed structure than what currently exists with the detached garage. So again, I believe this to be a minor, the variance to be minor. And with that, I'll just go into the summary. So to recap, it's a minor variance to permit a reduced rear yard setback. It's consistent with the provincial policy statement. As noted, the archaeological potential will be addressed through a condition, upholds the objectives of the Saugeen Shores official plan, and represents good land use planning. And the application satisfies the 4 tests. And with that, I recommend approval of the variance.
Thank you, Mr. Kingsbury. Would the applicant wish to address the committee? If not, I don't believe that we have any public comment. Oh, there's the...
Oh, hi, everyone. Thank you. I really don't have anything to add. I'm just here in case there were any specific questions as to the property or the variance application.
Thank you. Committee, any questions? Any comments? Deputy Mayor Matheson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And through you, this is a very unique property. And I'm going to ask Jay for a little explanation as he gave it to me today. Its front is on Huron Street, but we're taking the location of the building as the front, back, and side off of Morpeth Street. So Jay, could you explain to the committee how that actually works so that we all understand later on? Because as I said to you earlier, it really threw me off when the address is here on street, but we're looking at a different aspect of it from Morpeth.
Yeah, no problem. I'm not sure how the addressing system was originally set up, but certainly the way the zoning bylaw is written, that if you have a lot that adjoins, 2 streets or 3 streets, I suppose. So a corner lot in this case, the front lot line is actually the shortest lot line, which is in this case Morpeth. So just the way the bylaw is written for zoning purposes. So if you want a building permit, you have to read that Morpeth is the front yard setback, and all the other setbacks follow from there.
Councillor Grace. With your microphone, there we go.
Yep. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I've got a question just about this is on page 3 of the application in our slide deck, where at the back of the garage, the east side of the garage, or the proposed new garage, it has existing fence. And then it has, it sort of looks to me, though, as though the fence does not go along the lot line, the property of the boundary. Is that true? Maybe the applicant could answer, or Jay?
Well, actually, as of now, there is no back fence.
Okay.
There was a quarter of a fence, and the rest of it was a horrific snow fence by an old cedar hedge that had outgrown itself in 50 years. So the cedar hedge portion, which would be about 3/4 of the property from Morpeth to the south side, so going north to south, that's removed. It's completely empty right now, and there may be about a 20-foot section left on the southeast side that matches my south neighbor. So I can tell that portion of the fence was put up with that neighbor, that's my guesstimate. So right now there is no fence, but we are planning. My neighbor to the east has contacted me with respect to putting up a new fence, of course, when I'm finished. So we will be putting a fence between our 2 properties, and I can assure you that the fence will be constructed on the property line.
Okay.
When it's replaced.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? If not, may I have a motion, please? Moved by Councillor Rich and seconded by Mr. Legault, that the committee adopts the recommendations of the decision sheet and approves this case. Any discussion? We'll call the vote. All in favor? Councillor Grace, Deputy Mayor Matheson, Mr. Legault, Mr. Sharma, and Ms. Clinton. That is passed.
Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes our public hearings. Our next meeting date will be determined at the call of the Secretary Treasurer. Am I have a motion to adjourn, please? Moved by Councillor Grace, seconded by Councillor Rich, that we now adjourn the May Committee of Adjustment meeting. All in favor? Thank you, everybody. Thank you for your assistance and participation.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.